In a flashback, we are taken back to the time Ik-young dragged herself towards her newborn with a knife in her hand. She's scared of what she's made and tries to stab it, but hearing it cry, she stops. In front of her appears Hyun-soo, who has magically survived everything that went down that day. Ik-young abandons her child in Hyun-soo's care, hoping she will not want anything to do with it later. She's of course wrong, and when she sees the kid next, the girl looks about 5 to 6 and very human. She has Hyun-soo, Appa, by her side, taking care of her. When Ik-young is ready, she meets her child, treating her as a human. This is until the incident where she morphed into a teenager happened. Ik-young cuts the mystery girl's hand, saying she wants to know her as she is because she's her mother. The mystery girl stabs Ik-young in the eye with a pencil at this point in self-defense. Finally, Ik-young gives her daughter the special gloves so that she doesn't harm any more humans. Hyun-soo tries to convey to Ik-young that monsters are similar to humans in many ways, however, she doesn't see it that way. Eun-yu realizes her guardian angel is Hyun-soo, and she's grateful to see he's alive. He, on the other hand, tries to get away from her, asking the mystery girl why she tried to kill her. She tells Hyun-soo that all humans are bad, and he hurt her friends to save Eun-yu's life before, which she didn't appreciate. Eun-yu tries to go towards Hyun-soo, but he uses his wing to keep her away. Ho-sang, the old man, appears at that time with a gun and sends Hyun-soo away. It seems they somewhat know each other. On the other hand, Chanyeong has a bad reaction to the magic mushrooms, and Han-ai has had an entire bowl of that stuff, so she doesn't know how to help him. Ho-sang and Eun-yu return just in time. They feed him some leaves as an antidote. There's mutual distrust between Ho-sang and Eun-yu. Mystery Girl has decided to give up on her mother and Hyun-soo because they both care more for humankind. She's tired of hurting, so she's left her mother to die on the boat and doesn't even need Hyun-soo anymore. Or so she thinks. Ik-young faints on the boat, trying to find her daughter, and the baby monster that is friends with the Mystery Girl tries to save her even while getting burned and bruised in the process. Hyun-soo makes it just in time to save both of them before the whole thing collapses in the fire. Yes. Well, obviously not, but Kim Yong-hoo and his gang decide to head to Bamseum to save the person who sent the SOS signal. Lim joins them because he needs to check on some things. On the way, they stop because Lim has a bad stomach. In truth, it looks like the monsters are transforming through a cocoon-like process, and he takes a piece of one of these cocoons and puts it in his suitcase. This provokes the monsters in the area who are protecting that thing, whatever it is, which is something Kim Yong-hoo notices. Fortunately, they make it out of their safe even with Lim's theft. The team splits up when they reach Bamseum after Kim Yong-hoo reminds everyone that nature is healing thanks to the absence of humans. Inside, Lim and Kim Yong-hoo go one way, and Seo-jin and a bunch of others go another. Seo-jin traumatically loses one of his boys to a cocoon-like structure. A sludge comes out of it and follows the men into a room. It looks like there's no escaping this. On the other hand, Kim Yong-hoo stops Lim from touching the cocoons, which frustrates the scientist, who is essentially there just for research purposes. Yi-sul decides to have a party after being mistreated by her mother. The priest even plays some music, and they have a gala time before they hear the sound of a rumble from within the walls. It sounds as if there's a monster inside the shelter itself. Ji is acting extra strange at this point, and she asks Hyun-soo to help her with something, but she refuses. Everyone is gathered into one space in the shelter by Tak and his men. They're meant to keep them safe, so it's time to fight whatever monster is inside the walls. Yi-sul finds Yang-soo split from Jin Ok. He tells her she's not his real mother, so he's going to do what he likes with his life. She talks some sense into him, saying he should listen to his elders, somewhat proving that she's not really related to Ji by blood but loves her like a mother. Tak shows everyone who's in charge by shooting the roof and quieting them down. It's not quite clear if he's really a monster or not even now, but he keeps hearing these negative thoughts and seeing his skin heal when it's cut. The power goes off in the stadium, and everyone is panicked. Hyun-soo has no choice but to bring Ik-young to Eun-yu for help. She's partially burned and previously admitted to Hyun-soo that she was afraid of her daughter and thought about killing her without reason, which her daughter must know deep down too. Which is why she's acting up like a rebellious teenager right now. Hyun-soo tells her that the baby monster tried to save her, believing her to be family, so they're not all bad. He then takes her to Hosang's camp, where Chanyang is back to his senses, asking the two nomads to join them at the shelter too. Hosang doesn't trust humans, he says, so there's no way for him to go there. When Hyun-soo shows up, Eun-yu greets him with a hug, but he's too busy explaining Ik-young's situation. Hosang shoots at him, telling him to go away because he's a monster. Eun-yu stops him by grabbing Han-and-I and threatening to kill her. In any case, everyone there can turn or die at any time, so it doesn't really make a difference to her. Han-and-I flips things up and pushes the knife into Eun-yu's neck ever so slightly before Hosang yells at her. Chanyang is sad to watch all of this go down, realizing he might not get Eun-yu to himself after all. Han-and-I heads off with Hosang, and the rest head back to the shelter to save Ik-young. At the end of Sweet Home 2, Episode 7, Tak fights his inner demons that remind him that he killed his family, and that's the only way he can protect people. A man tries to bring him to his senses, but when he looks at Tak's eyes in the mirror, they're like monster eyes. It's still not certain if he is, in fact, a monster. We'll know in the final episode of Sweet Home 2. The soldiers find out that the electricity has been cut on purpose, and Tak is finally brought back to his senses after appearing to monsterize for a second. They find a ring near the electrical cables and think it's Yi-sol, who has no idea what's happening. It's possible that this is the favor Ji asked of her or that Ji herself did it, intending to frame Yi-sol. The poor girl gets dragged out in the middle of the night, and Ji simply slaps her in the face, proving to the soldiers that she must have done it. As we already know, Ji is looking for prey for her monster son, and Sungwon, who has been showing signs of turning, is her target. She asks him to help her secretly, and he's excited by the proposition. There's a tunnel underneath Ji's office, and she pushes Sungwon down there with a beastly growl. Kim Yong-hoo and one of his men find a young girl in Beomsum who claims to have seen Yong-suk. She takes the two men to where Yong-suk has been locked up but doesn't know how to get him out. Yong-hoo asks the girl to take him to meet the other survivors there, feeling a bit confused about how they can live there without fearing the monsters. In the meantime, the other guy tries to free Yong-suk, who tells him to run away instead, saying those people will not let them go. At the same time, Young-hoo meets their leader, who tells him that he's giving Yong-suk a choice to live like them. They're all MHs who can turn off their own free will, like Hyun-soo. It looks like nobody is going to make it out of Beomsum alive. Hyun-soo is the first to realize that Ik-young decided to give up on purpose. She didn't want to live with the guilt of treating her daughter like a monster or that of bringing a monster into the world. Chanyang tries to find an oxygen tank to save her, but it's too late, and there's no oxygen in the tank. Ultimately, they have to watch her die, and Eun-yu is angry. Hyun-soo tries to explain to her how things have been, and she tells him that she's grateful he came back to her. She wonders about Eun-hyuk. Hyun-soo was the last to see him, however, he never saw signs of him monsterizing. Hyun-soo heads out to find the mystery girl so that she can say goodbye to her mother. He tells her that she'll regret it later if she doesn't say goodbye now. He's probably reminded of his own family, whom he hated but couldn't bear the loss of. She reluctantly joins him and spends a few minutes with her mother, holding her hand. It appears at first that Ik-young is taking her last breath. She apologizes to the mystery girl for being a terrible mother. But, as we know, if the mystery girl touches humans, they turn into monsters. The mystery girl steps out of the room, telling Hyun-soo that her mother won't be in pain anymore, so he should stop worrying. On the other hand, Ik-young falls off the table, and everyone assumes she's dead. Hyun-soo sobs with her in his arms, until she suddenly starts to crack and spasm. Her monster form is one black side and one human side. The side on which Ik-young is burned turns completely black with little stem-like structures coming out of her, and her eye is white. The other side remains human, and when the suit-covered hand reaches out for Hyun-soo's neck, the human hand tries to stop it from harming him. Hyun-soo can see what's happening in Ik-young's head, and she looks like she's fighting her monsters within. Ultimately, he throws her into that pit that Eun-yu would have fallen into if Hyun-soo hadn't saved her. According to Hyun-soo, the monsters are all happy in their dreamlike state. Each human has two sides, one is the monster, and the other isn't. For most, the monster takes over so the human can be relaxed and happy forever, their desires fulfilled. According to Hyun-soo, Ik-young is unhappy even there, which is why he needs to stop her. Chan-young is quick to realize he's been killing humans if that's the case, but Eun-yu reminds him that nobody knew what else they could do with them. Chan-young realizes that Hyun-soo is the one who spared Eun-yu's life back when Chief Ji's husband died. Eun-yu finally admits that he was showing signs of turning, and when he tried to attack her, she tried to kill him but couldn't. That's when Hyun-soo saved her and killed Chief Ji's husband. Eun-yu claims that Ji and she always had a mutual distaste for each other, so she never went to correct her, and she couldn't tell the military that a monster saved her life. That would make things much more complicated than they already were. Hyun-soo sleeps for a bit, and Eun-yu decides to stay with him, while Chan-young decides to head back to the shelter. It's a bittersweet goodbye, and he wishes Eun-yu met the person she's so desperately seeking. When Hyun-soo wakes up, it's the monster side, not the human side, that is talking. Eun-yu asks him to let out the human side, but the monster looks to be enjoying his time out. He tells Eun-yu that Hyun-soo needs rest and that it's a symbiotic relationship, so he won't harm the boy. Eun-yu asks him what he's going to do, and he's got a mischievous glint in his eye before the screen blanks out. Hyun-soo has feelings for Eun-yu, so let's see how things turn out for them. Ho-sang tries to find a place devoid of both monsters and humans. He finally tells Han-an-I that he keeps her around because she's an empty shell. He appreciates that she's pretty much without emotions, so he can end her life if she were to become a monster rather easily. Han-an-I doesn't quite appreciate his reasoning, though, and she spikes his flask. She takes charge of the car and may be returning to the stadium. It's not quite clear what she has in mind. Dr. Lim is in his own wonderland in episode 8 of Sweet Home 2. He sits in one of those gooey cocoon-like structures, completely without fear. As he runs out of patience, he tries to touch the big structure hanging from the wall, but he hears some footsteps approaching. At first it seems, Ui Myung is back, but it's Sang-won, aka MH1, Ik-young's fiancé, who has returned from the dead. It wasn't Ui Myung who took up Sang-won's strength, but it was Sang-won who possessed Sang-wook's body all along. There was no Ui Myung. Sang-won tells Lim to say hi to his old friend, meaning they used to work in the lab together back in the day. In a flashback, we get to see how Lim cut off Sang-won's hand to run tests without remorse. Now, Sang-won has returned for revenge. We can imagine Sang-won and Lim were trying to find a cure for something but ended up cursing the world instead, bringing out these monsters. They might be the genesis of this whole mess, as we know Lim believes the monsters are cleaning up the virus that is humankind. So remember how there was a thundercloud-like thing in the green home apartment in episode 2 of Sweet Home 2 when Eun-yu went back to look for Eun-hyuk? Well, that was the beginning of a cocoon building there. Now, it cracks open, and out comes a brand new Eun-hyuk, giving us a smug smile at the end of the season. Sweet Home 3 will grace our screens in the summer of 2024.